absence as an excuse. Listen to this.
Yeah, man, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. I mean, I know that this game doesn't mean anything in the seeding. The playoffs start next week. It was an embarrassing effort, pathetic effort.
They did speak to Kevin Durant after the game, who said it wasn't pathetic. We could have played better. We did play with heart. We actually did try. We just didn't win. They got blown out by like 20 points last night.
Yeah.
Nick, what do you make of Steve Kerr calling out his team?
Man, so I had this game on. This was the first game to start last night. A bunch of 8 o'clock starts, a couple 10:30 starts. This game was the only game on for an hour, the only game of note on for an hour. So I'm watching it like, listen, what I make of what's going on with the Warriors is simple. I know KD does not necessarily want to have to be a leader. I think one of the reasons he went to Golden State was because he doesn't want that responsibility. He wants to play ball. Like he's made very clear in all his interviews, listen, man, I like playing ball. I like occasionally
the leadership that they had in Golden State was the perfect situation for him. With Draymond being the bad guy, Steph being the one who was cool and collected, and also going to be kind of the vocal leader besides Draymond on the team. You see how Clay sits in, cool Clay. He don't have to do nothing but knock down Jays, and he is totally fine with that. But his decision was based on these things and how the atmosphere in Golden State with Steve Kerr is very relaxed. The practices, they play music, very different atmosphere than other NBA teams. That's why part of the reason why he selected Golden State.
So I respect that. He said, I want to play ball and play video games. Cool. Like that's a great life you have. But right now they need you more than that.
Yeah.
And you might as well arrested everyone last night. You might as well have. I know it didn't mean anything for the seedings, but Draymond still played 30 minutes. Clay still played 30 minutes. KD still played 33 minutes. Like, you should have. And that was, by the way, I know you're not going to play Indiana in the playoffs. But Indiana has some similarities to some teams you could play in the first round, whether it be Utah, whether it be Minnesota. And so that you don't want that going into the postseason. The last thing, CC, you've talked about the gravity Steph has, how important Steph is to the offense as a whole. You are seeing this with what has happened to Draymond's offense with Steph out. With Steph out, Draymond is closely guarded instead of having wide open shots, and his offense is suffering from it. So that's something to watch in the first round of these playoffs.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Last season, it was reported that Texans owner Bob McNair had made a comment saying, quote, "We can't have the inmates running the prison," in reference to protests during the national anthem. Well, now McNair has regrets, not about making the comment, but about apologizing for the comment. McNair told the Wall Street Journal, "Main thing I regret is apologizing. I really didn't have anything to apologize for. We were talking about a number of things, but we were also washing some of our dirty linen, which you do internally. You can't do that publicly. That's what I was addressing, the relationship of owners and the league office." Nick, start with you. What was your reaction to these comments?
Bob McNair needs to stop talking publicly. I mean, that's my immediate reaction. My immediate reaction is he is doing no one any favors by continuing to do these interviews. I am not someone that gives a pass because he's 80 years old. I know plenty of older folks. Heck, that we just had my wife's grandparents in the studio last week. They're almost 90. They got it all together. He hasn't passed on control of his team. He's got it all together. He knows what he's saying. And he not only said that, and he insulted other people's intelligence. He's like, listen, maybe they're not familiar. This is a term used in the business world a lot. No, it's not. The term is inmates running the asylum. It's about crazy people, not about criminals. So when you say inmates running the prison, and you're talking about an overwhelmingly black league protesting treatment by the police
oh, no,
to
Nick,
black
I wasn't talking about them. I was talking about Park Avenue, Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell making $35 million. That's who I was talking about.
That's an insult to my intelligence. It is also an insult to a friend of mine in this interview, Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown is one of the most respectable players in this league, a leader on each team he's been on, a leader in the community. And Dwayne Brown said that, Dwayne Brown, keep in mind, he held out last year with the Texans. That was about a contract dispute. And then he commented on Bob McNair's comments when he was a Texan. He got traded to Seattle. And he said that Bob McNair, post the election of President Obama, said to the team what a bad day it was. Bob McNair called him a liar. I've spoken with Bob McNair before in my life. I've spoken a lot with Dwayne Brown in my life. I do not know Dwayne Brown to be a liar. I can say I believe what Dwayne Brown said. So that means I do not believe what Bob McNair said. And my last point on this is this, CC. The team owners need to recognize they say they are worried about the protests, not because they disagree with the protests, but because it could affect the bottom line. It turns off the consumer. It turns off the audience. Hey, man, there is a segment of your audience very turned off by what Bob McNair said. There are people that kneel in solidarity with the Texans, or even if they don't, they believe in the players' right to do so. And hearing these types of, in my eyes, indefensible comments makes whether it be players less likely to want to sign there, fans less likely to want to go to the games, or people less likely to want to watch the games. That's all a real thing. All the things you're saying the kneeling is doing, these comments are doing.
Bob McNair, to add to that, Bob McNair supported Jerry Richardson for the things that he did and said, the workplace problems, the environment that he created there in Carolina. Bob McNair said, he didn't really mean that. So you can't depend on Bob McNair. It's really disappointing because I just think that Houston fans and the players should take note. This is who your owner is. All right? This is who he is. This is what he stands for, and this is what he's about. Now, when he came into the National Football League, he didn't have no finance plan. He asked them how much it was. It was $550 million. He brought out his checkbook, didn't have an entourage of people with him in the ownership meeting, filled out the check, and slid it across. Now, that don't make him no genius. That just makes him rich. And to me, it just makes him naive and rich. Because in the environment that we're in, he had an opportunity. He could have level set everything. Yeah, those comments right there, even though they used to be comments that I used to use, I realize right now how offensive they are. But he really doesn't see that. This is who he is. Houston Texans. This is who your owner is. Fans, this is who your owner is. The players that play for the Texans, or anyone ever might want to play for the Texans. This is the guy who owns your team. Don't think he's going to change. And the reason why he's not going to change is because it's hard for rich people to change. All right? It's hard for them, and you could see that in his comments.
And there's one other comment he made, which I think, even if people don't like the inmates running the prison comment, they might have read in the Wall Street Journal interview and say, oh, he makes a good point, which was, he was like, we don't let employees express their political views when they're at work. And he used the example, someone goes to McDonald's, the McDonald's would never let their employee hand them the burger and be like, you shouldn't eat meat, or add some political opinion. Why do you have that Hillary bumper sticker or Trump bumper sticker, whatever it is? What he is, I believe, smart enough to know why that does not hold in his workplace. And sometimes you have to remind the fans, professional football, the players and the owners, have a collectively bargained agreement. That is not the regular workplace you work in unless you work in an environment with a collectively bargained agreement. Neither side can set any rules or parameters that are outside of the collectively bargained agreement. So unless you have agreed what the players must do in that agreement, regards to the anthem, regards to kneeling, regards to anything that you deem a political protest rather than a social justice protest, you need to collectively bargain it. Go back to the table and talk to DeMaurice Smith. Talk to union leadership. Until then this is your bed you've made. You lie in it. And I don't know, I used to live in Houston. Some of my closest friends are day one PSL holders. I know what Bob McNair had meant to that city. He brought football back to Houston. I mean, Houston doesn't need this representing them. The people of Houston are too good of people to have this guy talking on behalf of the city, because he doesn't.